I'm speaking with,
Claude Convisser.
and Claude is a member of the American Society for Testing and Materials, which is the ASTM International now, since the standards that are voted on here are used internationally. Is that correct?
Yes,
I think that's
they
what
are,
you just told
as
me.
well as in the United States. Yeah.
We're in the San Francisco Hilton, 333 O'Farrell, on Thursday, June 28th, 2012. And would you just go ahead?
Sure. My company, Plant Oil Powered Diesel Fuel Systems, which
POP.
goes by the short name POP Diesel,
Yeah.
is based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We are establishing the first nationwide network of filling stations for 100% vegetable oil to be used as fuel in any diesel engine that has our equipment installed, as well as in fuel oil burners, which are used to heat buildings in the mid-Atlantic and northeastern states. And I became involved in this organization in the summer of 2010 because I learned that they were starting to develop standards to address the use of vegetable oil in engines and also in fuel oil burners. The significance of ASTM is that many states adopt automatically whatever standards ASTM approves with regards to motor fuels and combustion fuels. And so my concern was that they may not have anybody involved in this process of starting to develop standards to govern the use of vegetable oil as a fuel, who had real world experience using it as a fuel and who understood that sure, if it's not used properly, it may cause damage to an engine, but certainly there are ways to use it so that it protects the engine just as well as the use of petroleum diesel would. So that's why I became involved, to find out and to make sure that this body was going to be approving standards that would allow the proper dissemination and distribution of the fuel and would not unduly restrict it in any way. And unfortunately, I discovered very early on at the very first meeting that the group was about to approve a standard that perpetuated many myths about vegetable oil fuel and contained a lot of false information about it, and also that automatically eliminated potentially half of the supply of waste vegetable oil in the United States, which my company would like to be able to use as fuel in certain diesel engines. When I realized that this standard that they were about to approve, which would automatically become law in many states around the country and potentially other countries as well, contained this false and unsupported information and these slanderous statements about vegetable oil fuel, I started to ask questions about what's the factual basis for your including this statement in your standard. What's the evidence that you have to restrict fuel in the way that you're proposing to do it? And the committee would not provide any such information. I made numerous requests at several meetings verbally. I put requests in writing by email, and the only response I ever got was from the subcommittee chair, pointing to a report published by the University of Georgia in 2002, which spoke glowingly of the use of vegetable oil in fuel oil burners and did not provide any basis for restricting the fuel or perpetuating the false statements that the subcommittee was proposing to publish, which they did end up publishing. So when I started to ask these questions and raise these objections, the representative to the subcommittee of ExxonMobil spoke up, and she said, if this subcommittee makes any of the changes that Mr. Convisser on behalf of POP Diesel is asking for, ExxonMobil is going to vote against this standard. And while in a theoretically democratic body like ASTM, which approves measures by vote of its membership, and anybody can join this organization, but it happens to be peopled by folks from the petroleum industry and allied businesses. The significance of the statement made by the ExxonMobil rep, even though any member of the organization can announce their intention to vote for or against a measure, was that after this happened, higher level people in the organization pulled me aside and said, one person said verbatim, everybody knows that ExxonMobil controls the ASTM Petroleum Products Committee. And another senior member who happens to be a subcommittee chair of another subcommittee essentially told me the same thing, not in those exact words. So then I realized, and the result turned out to be as well, following the statement by the ExxonMobil rep, that Exxon would vote against the standard if the subcommittee approved any of the changes that I was asking for. Subcommittee members were saying, well, your objection makes sense, let's see if we can make this change in the future, but essentially her threat about ExxonMobil's position caused the subcommittee to clam up at that point and not make any of the changes that various individual members had told me made sense. And the result of that exercise proved to be that the subcommittee did not make any of the changes that I had asked for and instead approved the standard as ExxonMobil had wanted it, with the false information and unreasonable restrictions included in it.